Hey fellow cooks and farmers, Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to Oxygen Not Included, the Frosty Planet, Episode 2, Food and Lodging. Alright, we have a little bit more information down here because we dug deeper. It's a biobot builder. My duplicates have discovered a laboratory full of dusty machinery. The vestiges of another colony's experiments, perhaps? It is unclear whether the apparatus is intended for biological experimentation or advanced mechatronics or both. So this requires a colonist to have the advanced medical care skill. It is currently decommissioned, and then there's also like a wall cabinet and some lockers and a computer. Inspecting the computer, after searching through the computer's database, I've managed to piece together some files that piqued my interest. So this is about ecotourism. So to be explored at some point. I'm not in any rush, because that's way more skill than we currently have in our colony. The other thing to note is we don't have anyone that has the hard digging skill, so the granite cannot be dug up. The igneous rock is softer, it can be dug up. So I'm only going to have a certain amount of farm size, because once I run into this granite wall, unless I skill up, we're not going to go any deeper into it, because I don't have the skill to do that. The snow melted under one of the beds? It sure did. Alright, down here where this ladder is, let's build the rest of the ladder so we can actually get to these digs and get to the research portal. And I'm going to say this is probably the more interesting things for me to do. So I'm going to set all these to 9, basically do them ASAP. And basic farming is now done. So we have the algae terraria, or terrarium, planter box, ration box, and compost. And I would like to build compost where the outhouses are. But in order to do that, I am going to need some minerals first. And we are only able to dig up igneous rock around us. So once we dig up some igneous rock, I'll have that built. We just don't have any minerals just yet. And the research portal is now open for us to discover. I'm also going to dig a 2-wide vertical shaft, because that's going to allow for the carbon dioxide to gather down here more easily. Alright, come on, Scorpio. Oh, yeah, alright, Scorpio's now doing it. He's headed down. Can I turn on the gas overlay to see how the gases are settling? Sure. So here's where the pockets of gas are. There's a bit of a pocket of carbon dioxide up here, but most of the carbon dioxide is settling down here on the lowest point. And some is getting trapped. So I wanted to be designing a design that allows for the free flow of carbon dioxide to basically gather at the bottom so that we can plant alveo vera to be able to convert it back to oxygen. The other thing I could do is, and I'll do that after I click this research discovery. Eureka! We have decrypted the research portal's final transmission. New buildings have become available. A wood heater, a ice liquefier, and wood tiles. Nice. So wood tiles are obviously made out of wood. They have really high decor. They're very pretty, and they allow for run speed. Wood is awesome. They're also a decent insulator, and they only slowly heat. Then we also have the wood heater, which I'm going to build one here. And then the ice liquefier, which turns ice into water, which allows us to feed the wash basins. So I'm going to build one in the bathroom. And then also in the bathroom, once we have the minerals, I will build the compost. as well. So good stuff. And we have our first printing pod. So I am usually very picky about the types of people that I add in. Taking a look at these people, these duplicants, I don't like any of them. The one in the middle was close, but he's anemic, which is a big problem. But digging, farming, building are like nice interests to have, but anemia is terrible. And then the other two, I don't need a full-time farmer, and I don't need a full-time operator. So I'm going to pick these shine nymph eggs, knowing that I can make an omelet out of them. Because I am not interested in ranching shine nymphs. The other thing I wanted to do is to enable auto harvest of plants around the base. So the alveo vera that exists, they are no longer absorbing carbon dioxide because they need to be harvested for their oxalate before they go back to absorbing more carbon dioxide. So I need to harvest them so that we can actually make use of the carbon dioxide absorbing properties it has. And I have enough minerals for compost. Perfect. Now I'm pretty picky about the dupes I add in, mostly because I am very careful about trying to keep them alive. So yeah, I am going to be very choosy, just to let you know ahead of time about who I admit to the colony. It does slow down progress, but I don't mind that as much as I mind bad duplicates. Just a personal preference. What is the average ambient temp? Negative. Well, so it depends where you mean, but let me go to the relative temp tab. So the bedroom is about negative 26 Celsius. There are some cold spots where this ice is. The bathroom's a little bit warmer at like negative 23. And then if we take a look at state change, you can see what is warming, what is cooling. But yeah, I haven't really tried to warm anything up around me yet. Skeletor, thank you for the resub. And Mr. GK, cheers. All right, so with this ice liquefier, I'm going to put this up to 7. The ice liquefier is going to be able to make us batches of ice. So the way this thing works is it consumes wood to melt ice into water, which can be bottled for transport. So it doesn't create a puddle of water around it. It creates essentially bottles of water. You input ice, you get a bottle of water out. It produces a fair amount of heat, so here might not be a permanent spot to put it in. And it does overheat at below boiling temperature, and the water never gets too hot enough to burn the tongue. So it outputs water that is not boiling, but just warm enough. And here, Nabla was feeding it some more ice, and then wood. Oop. And there we go. The ice liquefier is now liquefying, creating water, meaning that our wash basins will have the water to be able to wash hands. And we did just unlock farm tiles, so let's get those in order. For now, I'm only going to do 8. I think that's probably enough. And I'm going to leave space to, I'm going to leave plenty of space to, like, grow and expand beyond. So I'm leaving some overhead for plants and all that. And then above that, as I mentioned before, we were going to do a phlox ranch. So instead of these, let's do... Actually, I'm going to have this be... Let's see. Before I make any decisions, greenhouses have a max size of 96. So a max size greenhouse would be 19 by... let's see... 24 by 4? If I really wanted to stretch it. Because what I like to do is design in a way that is ultimately scalable later on. You know, to build things so that it can be scaled up rather than to build too small and then have to constantly redesign. So this is going to be the farm, and this is going to be the Phlox Ranch. Alright, we don't have any research queued up. So I did mention, if we want to get ranching at all, I need to get advanced research, so we'll get that next. Over here we also have the wood heater. So the wood heater is going to be outgassing carbon dioxide, which we will try to turn back into oxygen using the alveol veras. But it is creating a pocket of temporary warmth, so that here, as we can see, well, not Nabla, but I was hoping that one of my duplicants would run over there and actually warm themselves on the heating station. And we'll probably see that pretty soon. Oh, Phlox got stuck. I got you. So I'm going to keep the door to my farm closed because Phlox do eat the pike apples on the vine. So it'd be good to keep the Phlox away from my pike apples so that my pike apples aren't consumed by the Phlox. Because I don't really want them consumed by the Phlox. Oops, misclick. And then once we have a source of renewable food and wood, I can consider some other projects, like kitchens and mess halls and the like. So here, we will start planting pike apple bushes, and what I'm going to need to do is seek out pike apple and dig them up for their seeds. There is a lot of good resources, like there's a lot of dirt here. So I will dig a path into this, which will give us cinnabar, and then eventually pike apples. And maybe we can even get up to the lumen quartz. Man, I keep mispronouncing that. Alright, cool. So we have some pike apple bushes. And I'm probably going to want to raise the priority of tending to them. But given the priority of Nabla should probably get around to that anyway. Because doctoring and cooking, well, there aren't tasks for that at the moment. So the tending is pretty straightforward. And for now, my plan is to just cook the pike apples, like, adjacent to where we get them, because I'm not planning on setting up a kitchen at the moment. The kitchen and everything, eventually the plan is to put it in, like, an isolated area, as I said at the start of the stream, like a warming, insulated area up there. So until I have that, everything else is sort of temporary. So we have a different biome over here with some polluted ice. Lots of ethanol sort of to the northeast. Tons of oxalite. So oxygen is not going to be a problem for a bit. And soon we'll have a little bit more vision westward. Alt-S, Alt-Sierra, allows you to, like, zoom out. And hide overlays and all that, if you're wondering. Okay, we have some skills. Matic just leveled up. And I'm going to give Matic the ability to do hard digging, and I'm going to assign Matic a hard digging helmet. And that's going to allow me to dig into granite, which will allow me to better exploit the terrain around here. Now, the other thing I'm going to run into is there's this huge ethanol pool over here. So if I do want to expand, I said, what, 96 tiles? If I do want to expand 96 tiles, This ethanol is obviously going to be in the way, but there's a pretty easy way to solve that by approaching the ethanol from above and then building in here rather than having to pump the liquid out. And that might make more sense. So I'm not too worried about the ethanol pool because it's relatively easy to relocate some of that ethanol so it doesn't bump into our ranch. Alright, the other thing I wanted to do over here is to, at least for now, set up a cooking grill. I'll plop it right there, and it's so that we can turn the pike apples into something tastier. Because basic pike apples are best probably not eaten raw. Pretty grisly, low morale food. And then I want to probably relocate this ration box right next to the grill. And then maybe if we run into morale problems, set down like a basic mess hall would not be a terrible idea. So I'll work towards that as well by constructing a temporary basic mess hall over here. Pretty much everything I'm putting down right now is somewhat temporary because I do intend to design more permanent facilities in an isolated area for like cooking and sleeping and all that. Scorpio leveled up. So Scorpio, I'm going to give you advanced research. And then Nabla will get cooking. We'll get grilling. So the 3 meals that we have so far, pike apple skewers. So we take a 800 kilocal pike apple and turn it into 1200, raising the quality from grizzly to poor, which will help with a little bit with morale. And then there's also souffle pancakes, which is raw eggs and sleet wheat grain. We don't have any sleet wheat grain, so that's kind of moot. And then frost buns, which is sleet wheat grain. Speaking of eggs, we also have the 3 shine nymph eggs here, which we can possibly crack into raw eggs. One of the nice things about this biome, which should be pretty obvious, but I'll add anyway, is that refrigeration is kind of offered for free. Because everything is super cold, it keeps pretty well as long as it's not in, it's not in like polluted oxygen environments or something like that. All right. So the waspitions, let's look at the germ overlay. Nothing really got germy. That's great. At the temperatures we're at right now, germs would have trouble spreading anyway. Most of the germs are cryophilic or cryophobic. Sorry, philic is the opposite. Meaning that like they don't really spread when it's super cold anyway, so it's not really a problem until you start heating things up. But once you start heating things up, you got to be a little careful because you don't want your permafrost to melt and release COVID 2024, right? That would be not good. So there we go, we got advanced research, and the advanced research is going to give us the skill computer, and I'm just temporarily going to stick the skill computer over here. I know it's ugly, but it's close to our power network, so it's fine. And that will allow us to start research towards ranching, which we're not going to get for a bit, but I might as well start working towards it. So as I mentioned, over here will be a little area for mess tables. 1, 2, and 3. And then a door to separate it out so it's actually a mess hall. If we wanted it, so there's a mess hall, a great hall. A great hall has mess tables, no industrial technology, and a fancy decor item. We could try to work towards that, because it's not too hard to afford. It's just probably initially we don't really need the morale benefit for it. We could try to trigger like the overjoyed effect. So essentially, when your duplicants have a breakdown, they have a predetermined breakdown. So let me hide the interface just so that you can see it. So if we take a look at the bio here, when, for instance, Nabla is really happy, they will decorate a room when they're overjoyed. So they'll put stickers everywhere, which increases the decor around them, which raises the mood of others. And when they're upset, they'll puke everywhere, which requires a lot of cleanup and, you know, food. Scorpio, when is stressed, will binge eat, and when is happy, will hand out balloons to everybody, which is a nice thing to do. And then Matic here is also a vomiter, and they will streak around with happy sparkles when they're happy. So there's the when the mood is really high, they have the positive effects, and the mood's really low, they'll have the negative ones, and they're pre-predictable. So the last skill we want is Nabla. And Nabla needs to get ranching pretty soon, but initially I want to do grilling so that I can turn the pike apples into something more edible. But we need some minerals for the ration box for the pike apple, so I'm waiting for the granite to be mined, and maybe I'm a little impatient, so I'm just going to put that up to a 6, so it's slightly higher than the background 5s. We also haven't unearthed the pike apples over here, or pike apples down here. So there's a lot of pike apple seeds potentially here as well, which we could liberate for ourselves. So I'm going to work towards getting these pike apples and shrewberries, and then these as well. There we go, we got the minerals, so that allows me to make a ration box. I'll just make it out of igneous, and I'll plop it here. So we can move the food next to the backcountry grill, and it's going to be a little bit easier for us to gain access to that. Then additionally, I am going to want an egg cracker, but we are probably going to run into so few eggs that I'm just going to put the egg cracker right next to the Frosty printing pod, because I don't really care where it goes. Because we only crack eggs like once in a while. It's not a regular thing. And there's our supercomputer allowing us to get ranching tech. So for now, I'm going to prioritize planting the pike apple seeds in our own farm for our own consumption. But once we have ranching, we can consider pike apples up there for the flocks to ranch on. All right, new blueprint. A full-time cook, an operator rancher who doesn't like critters. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Or sandstone or Joja seeds. Before I pick that, let me look up the temperature range of Joja seeds. Index. Plants. Jumping Joja. 0 to 100. Yeah, I'll take the seeds. So here's why. Once we have a temperature controlled area for our people to live in, our duplicants to live in, a lot of the native plants here will not survive in that temperature. So if I want pretty potted plants, I'm going to need to probably import seeds from other biomes. So the pretty seeds that happen in this biome is the Idilla. So these are the decorated plants that are native to the Frosty. And if it exceeds 5 Celsius or 41 Fahrenheit, they wither. Meaning that they're really bad plants to use in a warmed environment. So these plants are really nice to spruce up the place outside in the cold, but you know, if I'm trying to build a temperature-controlled insulated area inside of the base, the Idilla plants are not Idilla, if you catch my terrible pun. So the pike apples are growing. We're getting a little bit of a mess hall. And the minimum size for a mess hall is 12 tiles. So even though we're going to have mess tables, I need to excavate a little bit more so that it becomes the appropriate size for the morale bonuses. So taking a look at the morale, if you're wondering. Nabla's morale is 9, needs 1. Scorpio's 12 needs 1, and Maddox 9 needs 1. So in terms of morale, like, I am passing with flying colors. There's no issue yet. So it's just one of those things that, like, yes, down the line, I'm definitely going to need to supply a lot more morale. But for now, like, people are pretty happy. There's not a lot of issues. So we're still working on the goal of getting up some initial pike apple farming. How many is this? 9? No. 11? No, I'm actually good with 8. So in terms of cacao requirements, if we take a look at our charting here, every day we remove, oh, well, one of them didn't eat today, but we remove about 1,000 cacaos, and then these pike apples are cooked for 1,200 cacaos. So a pike apple bush producing 1 pike apple can give someone food for a day. And these things take about 3 days to grow. So 3 pike apples per duplicant is roughly what you need. Roughly. So I will, what I'll do is I'll have a little bit of extra to build up a supply for when we add another duplicant. So I'm really looking at maybe, let's say, roughly a 12 pike apple bush farm for now. And then I can scale it up, you know, when we need it scaled up. Also, it's worth mentioning, flocks barely graze on pike apples. They don't have really high diet requirements, so they're very easy to feed farmed pike apples. That's not much of an issue. All right, here we go. We also have a mess hall. So we have the mess hall, we have a barracks, we have a latrine. Some of the other buildings that I haven't covered. So a washroom is plumbed latrine, basically a latrine with plumbing, obviously. And given that liquid water is kind of hard to come by in this map tile, washroom is kind of way far down the line. Luxury barracks would be comfier beds, which I don't really have access to for a bit. And then private bedrooms is not a barracks, but obviously comfy beds in their own individual room. That's pretty ideal for late game. Great halls are a little bit easier to get to than some of the other ones, where all we need is like a water cooler and a fancy decor item in there, and it would be enough. So that's a really easy bang for your buck. When I need morale, I can push for a great hall. A kitchen requires a cooking station, refrigerator, spice grinder. And the reason so this is why I just have my grill out in the open. We aren't going to have a spice grinder anytime soon. We barely have need for refrigeration, so it doesn't even make sense to have a refrigerator plugged in, necessarily. We could have a refrigerator actually off, next to a ration box that has all the food in it, and have it be a kitchen. So that's entirely possible, but because everything is sub-zero, the benefit of a refrigerator is basically nil. But eventually we'll make a kitchen at some point. But that doesn't even help with morale. That just speeds up the speed at which you cook, which is why I'm not too concerned. And then we have other things like way far down here, which are, most of them are not morale bonuses, except for the recreation. The nature reserve might be something good to make pretty early on, though. If I was to pick one specific project to work on, a nature reserve is another, just like the Great Hall. A lot of bang for your buck morale-wise, and not too hard to do. So the nature reserve is a 6 morale, and the Great Hall is a 6 morale. And 12 morale is a hell of a lot of morale. Isn't a refrigerator, when things are below 0, considered a heater? Yeah, it would, exactly. There's just not much of a benefit for refrigeration for us. Alright, so I think the push is to probably dig up the seeds that we want access to. So, coming back down here, digging up those pike apples, digging up these pike apples, and digging up these pike apples. And this might be a good place to consider setting up our Alveo Vera farm in order to convert a lot of the carbon dioxide back into oxygen. Looking pretty good so far. So let's make that a bit of a priority. I'm going to have it be a 6 that we dig to the pike apples. And a 6 that we make this ladder. In fact, this ladder needs to go down like that. Because the sooner we have the pike apple sown, the more food that we'll have stockpiled. So if we take a look at the consumables here, we do eat raw strawberry, but we do not eat raw pike apple. So any pike apples that we're acquiring, we are sort of keeping for ourselves for later. And then I'm going to do, once we crack the eggs, I will do the same thing to the eggs. We're not going to eat raw eggs. Will too much oxygen kill the aloe vera farm? No. So the aloe veras will not absorb carbon dioxide, but they can exist in an oxygenated environment. So here's a good example. The growth of this aloe vera is halted, but it's not dying in oxygen. So these two plants can't be dug up for seeds because I'm not trying to convert carbon dioxide back into oxygen at this elevation, but the plants aren't actively dying. Oh, some of the oxalate underneath the second wash station sublimed. And we are going to need to replace that. And that's true of like all of this oxalate here, is it eventually decays away into oxygen, or sublimes into oxygen, not decays away, that would be wrong. Which means that like this tile, for instance, will eventually disappear as well. That happened over here. There was oxalate there that, you know, sublimed into oxygen. And that's going to continually happen throughout this expansion, because there's just a lot of oxalate, and as soon as it gets exposed, it starts to sublimate. It doesn't sublimate if the density of oxygen exceeds, I think, 1,800 grams per tile, but any lower and it will. I don't think it tells me the density at which it doesn't here. And then also, if it's submerged in a liquid, it won't either, which is a good way to keep it's a good way to keep oxalate from, you know, subliming, if you want to use it as a fuel or something, because there's oxalate rockets and oxalate fueled objects in the game. So there we go. Now we have access to these pike apples. These two are also harvestable. They're like they'll full yield. And some shrewberries. And it looks like ranching tech is about to get finished. And the other thing is that the supercomputer... So the regular computer requires dirt for research, and the supercomputer requires water. So having the the ice liquefier is really, really handy when it comes to getting advanced research. So after that, my next research... I might start filling in the liquids and gases. Because they're handy to have, but it's not necessarily going to be helpful to me in the near future. Most of what we need immediately is just like ranching and farming and not much else. I'm not too concerned about our power consumption either. We don't need to immediately jump to like a powered you know, habitat. There we go, we cracked the eggs, and we're gonna have raw eggs that we can turn into souffles or omelets. And ranching just got researched. Sweet. So with ranching, we can pick critters up, drop them off, release fish, feed critters. So for the flocks, we don't really need a critter feeder. They will just eat pike apples off the vine. So that's sort of the plan, is to have them vine fed. So what I'm going to do here is set up a shearing station. set up a critter drop-off station. So any wrangled flocks get dropped up there. And then also set up a grooming station. And for now, this will be the extent of my ranch. I don't really need it bigger than this. The flocks are pretty light eaters. If I do want to add in additional, I could go 9 more tiles to the right. So right now this is a 60 tile, and I can go 9 more tiles to the right for a 96 tile, which is the max size ranch, if we need more flocks at any point. But this is pretty good initial ranch setup there for flocks, once we have the pike apples to be able to be planted for them to graze on. And then also that is going to require Nabla to level up twice, right? So improve farming and then critter ranching, because until Nabla has the skill points for critter ranching to be able to wrangle them, we can't have a flocks ranch. So this is just like later on down the line. So the current priority right now is to expand the farm and ready the ranch. So big picture here is to, you know, right at the start, to make sure that you have a place to poo and a place to sleep. And then shortly thereafter, you want a source of food, which I'm working on now. And then eventually you want to be able to replenish the wood that you're burning for heat and fuel and all that. So I'm working on all of those to make sure that we have renewable resources for everything that we're relying upon. So getting all of these pike apples. Ooh, there's another one I didn't even see. Getting all these pike apples harvested and then replanted. And then I think once we have the ranch and the pike apple farm done, I would like to start to work towards some sort of outside of the insulated base areas alveo vera farming. To make sure that the carbon dioxide that is pooling down here from us breathing and burning wood does get converted back. Because if you don't do that, you'll eventually run out of oxygen, and the only way to replenish it easily in this biome is to either dig up new oxalate or to somehow electrolyze water. But liquid water doesn't really exist in plentiful quantities, in meaningful plentiful quantities, so it's much better to rely upon the alveo vera for the short to mid-term. Otherwise, you're going to run into some logistical problems, I think. New colony achievement. Have a duplicate eat a cooked meal. Nice. So I'm assuming the pike apple. Yeah, pike apple skewer. And Scorpio's eating one too. So as a result of that, we, like Scorpio, for instance, has a morale of 16, which is honestly ridiculously high this early on in the game. Especially given that their sleeping quarters is pretty simple and pretty dirty. I haven't actually tidied up anything. I haven't done any attempt to store or tidy at all. But they do have a wood heater, and that's keeping them a little happy. So that frost resistance there, where is it again? Is a static effect that is gained. Here, let me hide the overlay real quick so you can actually read this if you want. Is gained when you sort of warm yourself at one of these wood heaters, and it removes these soggy feet, which is really helpful when you have liquid locks, which, yes, I'm absolutely planning on using to thermally insulate the inside of a base. So, and it has a sphere of influence here. So I built the wood heater in the middle of 4 beds, knowing that the wood heater goes 4 tiles left, 4 tiles right. You know, so I've sort of designed this in such a way that it would benefit from that that range. Are volcanoes and geysers possible on this asteroid? Yes. There are volcanoes and geysers on Ceres. There are just not many of them. It's geothermically pretty inactive. Okay, we have access to a whole lot of seeds now, so I do hope that our duplicates make good use of that. So if you're wondering, the farm is not a farm. It's not recorded as a farm at the moment because I don't have like a plant tending station. So different rooms will have different requirements, as I've already shown, but the farming requires a farm station. So it might not be a terrible idea just to get a farm station in there, even if I'm not using it to actually fertilize anything, just so that it gets registered as a farm. But Nabla is so busy over here cooking that Nabla really hasn't had the time to do much farming. As you can see, they periodically warm themselves with a wood heater. So for now, I only have a wood heater in the bedroom, but as you can see, it's something... they really like to work either warmed by the heaters or work in a warm environment, so that's why... you can approach this by just like keeping them cold all the time, but they will be slower and more ineffective duplicants as a result. So having them regularly check in on the wood heater is nice, but it will require us to like run over there, which makes them less productive. And that's why I've given Matic, who tends to be the one furthest from the center of the base, the warm sweater. Thank you for tuning in to Oxygen Not Included, the Frosty Planet, which originally streamed live on Twitch, July 25th. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you would like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and a special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or upcoming stream. Farewell, my fellow duplicants.